Hey, this is Brooks, and we are back with episode number 2 with Eric Muschinski about manifesting an incredible life. And the last podcast ended abruptly due to a parking meter issue with my alarm and turned the podcast off. So we are back to talk about specifics. Just to get you back to speed, we were talking a lot about what is the process of creating a life, beyond your wildest dreams. And Tim Ferriss calls it lifestyle design. And so we started talking about this 10-10-10, which is a list, not necessarily 10 things, but it's a good starting point of gratitude, affirmations, and manifestations. So we're going to talk more specifics about how that has worked in our lives. So welcome back, Eric.
Thanks, man. Good to be here.
All right, so why don't you just kind of take it away, because I know you've been working on this in your head with some ideas about how we should move forward.
Yeah, let's see. It's been probably a little over a month since we last recorded, so it's good to get that little refresher of the last podcast. I don't want to repeat too much, but I think that the goal that we discussed was to talk in part 2 about how people could just get started, and also specific examples of, some of the pieces of the living documents that we have going on right now, and really kind of drill in deeply in terms of how that stuff works in real life for us. And so, thinking back to this period in my life where everything started to change for me, I realized that it was in 2010, 2011, so not too long ago, but, this is when I really made a decision. We were just talking about that before we came on, and that's a big part of it. If I want to change my life, for me, what was happening is I started to get restless in my mid-30s regarding my potential, and am I ever going to fulfill it? Am I ever going to take my game to that level, or is there always going to be this ceiling? And is it also going to be just staying in what I know? Meaning, I was a broker, an alternative investment advisor for 16 years since I was 21 years old, in different capacities, but always, working for different firms and having a business that was fairly confined in terms of what I did. I managed money for people, and I love that the markets and the capital markets and all the things that go around that world. But what I realized was that I was being handcuffed in ways that were really limiting what I could do. And in that case, what it was, I remember sitting in a meeting with the CEO of my firm in Orange County and just telling him, what can I do to make $1 million a year? It's about that time. And I had never really come, close. I mean, I had some pretty big years in my career and, a lot of ups and downs, but that would have been taking it, to the next level by a factor of 3 or whatever. And, we started to talk about what that could look like. And this is when I started to incorporate these different things. That also coincided with hiring an executive coach, which I think that happened on its own. And then during that time is when I found the answer. I take that back. I found the answer before it. I read the first half of the answer, and then I didn't do the work. I didn't answer the questions, which is really important in terms of defining what it is that I wanted to do in my business and in my life. And as this process unfolded for me, I feel like there was really, number one, a decision. Okay, I want to go to the next level. So am I willing to do whatever it takes to get there, and what vehicles are going to come up for me to get there? Is it going to be what I've done my whole career and I just have to do more of it and do it better? Or is something new going to end up arising? And what I found is that when I started to take action with this stuff that we're talking about, which ended up really morphing into 10-10-10, things started occurring, meaning the path of how Like if you asked me in the beginning of 2011, what businesses or what business would be the vehicle specifically for me to live the life I do today, I would not have been able to give you an answer, and I certainly wouldn't have been able to predict it would look like it does for me today. That's part of the magic of this process, I feel like, because there's a lot of things that really start to get fueled. I mean, you think about things like faith or belief or fear, which are really, I feel like there's a tug of war there. It's not just for, the state or condition or the eternity of my soul. It's about how I live my life on a daily basis. A lot of us are very, very fearful deep down inside about change and making changes. And so this all started off by me taking very simple actions. We could talk about the answer, which I think is a great thing to read for people that are just starting out and want to live their dream life. And if you're in business for yourself or are thinking about that, it's even better. But I find that I've talked to people who aren't even in the business world, and I'll tell them, because they want to do something different, they want to make a change, to read the answer the questions, to define what it is that they want their life to look like, use the tools in the book, which in that case is affirmations and a vision board. And I know with the utmost confidence that things can happen for them that they aren't expecting, don't know how to make happen. And then I say, call me, and we'll talk about the next step, which is basically adding the 10-10. So, that's a lot of information. I'm sure you have some thoughts. So why don't you?
Yeah. It's so the theme that popped up for me when you said to your boss, like, what do I need to do to make $1 million, or that's what I want to do, and asking yourself, is this going to take more work, just more of the same, working harder, more diligent, doing what I already know how to do, or is it something different? And as you spoke after that statement, it became clearer and clearer to me that when you talk about faith, is that there's a spiritual component that comes along with making a decision in this realm. Maybe there are some things that you can do in life and just work harder and be more diligent about, and you get results, and you're done. What this sort of work has done for me is build my faith, not in the results so much, although the results have been good. The evidence of whatever result that you do get, if it's anything close to what you were shooting for, it reinforces that faith. And that's not really how faith works, right? You don't. There shouldn't need to be evidence, but because that's kind of what faith is, like lack of evidence. But in this process, the success that I've had has been around letting go of the results rather than working harder towards them. It's so that it for me it's an opportunity to connect with something that I wasn't connected to, and also, and we've talked about this before, having the financial hangups that I had about money. I didn't have money. I saw money as evil, but potentially, and so that I didn't have it was okay, because I don't want to be that guy that has money and lose sight of what's important. But what this has allowed me to see is that those things can be right in concert. All of it's in concert. And that's a kind of, I guess my point is that this is another access point into spirituality, into tapping into something that's going on right in front of you. And I had some other thoughts, but I'll shoot it back to you.
Yeah, so I respectfully disagree about the faith comment, and it actually strikes a chord. I think this is a great tangent to go on, because when you said that there shouldn't need to be evidence or that there's a lack of evidence, I would put that more along the lines of hope, maybe in a definition of hope. But in faith, I'm just using a scripture because this is the way that I think about the definition, which is faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So it's indicating that if you have faith, you believe that it's not only there, it's not only going to happen. There's evidence of it, even though you can't see it. And that's this whole equation here for me, which is that, like, if you talk about bringing spirituality into the mix with all this, which for me and for you, it's a big part of our lives, and it's a big part of this entire process. But if I look at it from a standpoint of this is greater than the law of attraction, let me just put that out there, because the law of attraction never did it for me. If I'm just making all of my own decisions of what I want to attract, I can turn my life into a disaster. I tend to believe that, number one, I don't maybe know what's best for me at certain times. Number two, I want God involved. Not only do I want him involved, I want him running the show or directing and guiding these different things. So either it has to align and be congruent or it doesn't. And when I bring that thought into this process, why it's so powerful for me is because this builds my faith. So, for example, let me just pull one of my affirmations out right here. One of them, it's right on this topic. God is guiding my steps even when I do not see it clearly. So you'd think, okay, we're talking about business and making $1 million. This is important to me. This is what I want to affirm because I have doubts. I have this, I have that. This sears this thought, this statement, this affirmation deep into my subconscious. I want to get into that next, which is the conscious and the subconscious, because that's a big part of this as well. But when I say that to myself and affirm it every single day, I believe it more. It becomes stronger faith and a stronger belief. But say God's doing that or he's not doing it, God doesn't have a problem with it. He's perfectly capable of it. All of this stuff is for my benefit in terms of executing my part of the deal, my part of life, what I can do to take action. And that's why, when I look at all of my affirmations right now, most of which are pretty current in terms of what I want to focus on, there's not a ton here about money. It's a lot of other stuff. But in any event, when I think about fear versus faith, a lot of times this stuff, there's some correlation with faith or with fear and our subconscious mind and what that produces in our reality that is many times more powerful than what's in our conscious mind. I find that, that's why this is also so critical and impactful, because of the repetition that's done on a daily basis, where it gets rehearsed so that it penetrates my conscious mind and actually gets deep down inside of my being, so that faith, because of it, is igniting something in the universe that causes stuff to happen. In a lot of cases, it's very magical stuff, like in terms of relationships, people that come in and out of our life and open doors and close doors and things of that nature. Those are the things that I find so exciting about this whole process. But
yeah, so I respectfully agree with you. I take back my statement, because it's not I think when I say faith without evidence, I think that's an old thought in my head prior to having faith. And the truth of the matter is that the reason that I'm so in is because there is evidence for me. And I think that maybe that's the distinction, is that that I have. I like that affirmation you have about seen and unseen, because that's what I came to understand, is that God was working in my life way before I got involved, like in the conversation. There are times and places in my life when I recall, like, wow, how did I make it out of there? Way before I had some sort of spiritual awakening or any reference to a higher power, it was things. Someone intervened. And when I was able to accept that something bigger than me was working in my life, the evidence became crystal clear. And so more and more I could see in my life that if I aligned with whatever will that was, I could see clear. There'd be less filters around what was actually happening in my life and what was possible. So yeah, I agree. I mean, and when I speak of my personal experience with this process and I just explained before we started speaking to a new friend about gratitude and how he wanted to feel more grateful. He knew he should be grateful, and he's like, how do I be grateful? And I explained to him, like, write a list. Start in the morning and just write a list of things that you think you should be grateful for. And if one of the and as you move into life, into the day, if there are moments where you can be aware that other people are struggling and you choose to let them be human and let them have their experience without reacting to them, that awareness alone is evidence of a spiritual awakening, that you are not black and white. You're not reacting to the world in a split second with no consciousness of what your words or actions are going to do. So for you to just have that awareness that you gave somebody space, put that on the gratitude list, and that gratitude list becomes more powerful because there's evidence that you are becoming grateful. And and if from that, it's easy you gain momentum in all this. So again, it's really finding the evidence maybe right in front of you that you claim to not have access to. So I agree.
Yeah, a good point. And I think it's great to dabble into the gratitude side. And now that but before that, what's coming up for me is that let's just go right to the heart of it, right? So if you look at it from a standpoint of, and listen, if this isn't really applicable to your concerns about people that are agnostic or, whatever, think that God or the universe is very general and, they're not going to care much about what I'm about to say, but some people may be concerned. This was a concern of mine, which was like, how do I know what I'm putting on here is God's will? And so it even takes it's a step before that is my worldview. Like you said before, you didn't believe that money was a good thing or you were supposed to have a bunch more of it or whatever. And so we have to become aligned. Our worldview has to align up with this concept of, so if I want to, the theme, manifest an incredible life, does God want me to have an incredible life? And if he does, what does that look like? And if he also does, which part of it is my part and which part of it is his part? What we're mostly talking about here, I think, is our part, and he's got to be involved. But I mean, the fact is that I look at these different things that I affirm, and personally, I have to believe very congruently that it's God's will. Otherwise, I'm barking up the wrong tree. If I put that I want a Bentley on the list, my view about this has changed over time. I feel like I don't really know that God cares what kind of car I drive. If I've done all this different stuff and he's blessed me, that's great. Obviously if I'm overextending myself and doing it to be flashy or try to feed my ego, then that's an intention or a motivation that doesn't seem aligned with God's will. But I'm looking at some of my affirmations, and most of these I can just tell you I have zero qualms about whether or not he wants it for me or not. The one that I read, how God is guiding my steps even when I do not see it clearly, no problem. I don't think he's got a problem with me believing that or wanting to believe that more. I am trustworthy and do what I say that I will do at all times. Does God want me to have integrity? Of course he does. Here's one. And I'm just pulling out these because we're on this part of the topic, but I put God's will first in my life and completely surrender my will to him. So this brings up something too where my documents have evolved as well, where I use this stuff for spiritual strength and guidance and really put a lot of these tools to work, throw the kitchen sink at my spiritual development. It's not all about, the money or the business, but as you'll see on my manifest list, I do have a lot of that stuff too. So it's a mixture of both. But my comment being, there are no rules with this stuff. You don't have to use these tools for just self-gain. You could use these tools and focus nothing but on service and charity. And it's going to make that stuff more impactful and more effective. So I don't know if you had a thought on that.
Well, I think the question that comes up is, well, two things. I think it's a great demonstration of how there can be a broad affirmation around a very specific topic, and those are great. But there is a distinction between an affirmation, which those are, which I think can be very aligned. And this is my hang up, or this is society's hang up, but those are all good things. You flip the page to manifestations, how much of that looks financial versus spiritual. And so that's on mine as well. And actually I have to bring it up and look at it. The other question would be, I come from a school of thought that, I pray for God's will, and I really don't get that specific because I don't know what God wants. So you sort of spoke to that too, but when it comes to manifestations, how I have addressed that when it comes to being very specific about the things I want, I don't see that as prayer. I see that as a statement, and that may or may not happen, but it's a statement. And what I know to be true is that before any of this came to light, there were plenty of thoughts that I had in my head that were not it's probably not what God wanted for me, and certainly things that I didn't want that I manifested. And those were bad things. If I said I was, never going to be able to find the girl of my dreams, I was never going to be successful here, I was never going to win at a sport, he's better than me, she's better than me. Any of these things, these repetition, like those are the things that I have practiced over a lifetime, that I've taken a conscious thought and then a million times over. I mean, they talk about this in the Four Agreements. It's about impeccability of the word, and that very often that's talking about somebody else. Like, these words have incredible power. What this has become is a positive leading aspect of that same idea, which is, okay, this is my life. I'm grateful for it. There are things that I know that are true about me and true about my life, and I live it in a certain way. And these are the things that I want to come into my life. And so that's how I sort of, the scales tip when the amount of energy that I would put towards judging myself in a negative way is epically more substantial than the work that I've done on the positive side. So for me, that's really how I personally deal with that prayer question, because I don't want to necessarily be praying to God for what I want, and maybe that's copping out a little bit, but I'm much more gonna that praying for God's will. It's a lot easier, and also I'm not attached to the results.
Yeah, and that brings up a good point too about some of these that I just read. I feel like I have 110% confidence. It aligns with my beliefs and with what God wants in my life. And there's some that I'm not quite sure. Like, for example, you made a good point. When you go to my manifest, although I have some things on here that are still spiritual in nature or focused on my ability to be almost like, just in simplistic terms, a better person, there's a lot on here about cash, like straight up money, and being very, very specific. To me, that this is the manifest part of it, comes down to where it's a little bit more like goals. I haven't read this stuff in a long time, but when you look at the power of goals and just writing things down in general, like we're using some sort of intermediate to advanced tools. We're taking that premise and we're even juicing it up a little bit more and reinforcing it. But at the most simple level, there are a lot of studies done about the power of writing down things on a daily basis, having goals over periods of time. And, the reason for that, I think, is because it keeps us on track, on task. We realize what we're shooting for, and then we are reminded of it on a regular basis versus letting us veer off onto some track. We don't know if you don't know where you're going, well, it doesn't really matter with which path that you take. But if you've made that choice, in any event, I feel like there's some of this that, maybe it's not congruent with God's will. There's certain things, the way that I use it as a litmus test is that if I know that what I'm doing or shooting for is going to enrich those around me and my ability to be of service, then that usually puts it in the bank. If it's more of like a bonus for me, for all my hard work and everything that I did, then I have to be flexible to let that go. Because if I'm kicking against the prick, so to speak, where I want that Bentley and it's like, it just keeps slipping out of my fingers, then at a certain point, what am I going to do? Am I going to keep pushing? Is it that important? If I'm feeling it in my instinct and in my stomach that it's just not meant to be, then I may have to cross that off. That doesn't happen a lot with this stuff, but sometimes it does, and I'm just like, look, this just isn't important anymore. So it's good to be flexible with this stuff. And we've talked about where these things become a living document, right? I mean, we have the affirmations, which in a lot of cases talk about who we are as a person. The manifest is more of almost like a goal or specific things that we can get into that sometimes talks about who we are as a person, but oftentimes is specific things around us in our life and our business. And when these things start to come true, we take those results, we take those manifestations, and we're convinced that an affirmation is absolutely our reality. We put those on the gratitude list. There's a bunch of stuff on here I look at. I use on the gratitude list, I look at a lot of it is sort of macro. I would call it, macro and micro. Macro being, things about family or generalities, physical health, abundance of good friends, things like that. And those are going to stay on there, and I can read those and be reminded that I have them and I should be grateful for them. But then there's this stuff like you were talking about where you have a moment, and I really haven't even looked at it that way because I'm not as active with this as I used to be. I'll take the big stuff where I know that it was just hit like a certain figure. I had this, I had a big number that I was going to have my biggest month ever in terms of income. And this was, I don't know if it was this last year or the year before. And I put a number down and it was way above like anything that I'd ever done before. And that month came because I put a month on it. The month came and went, but I was moving up the bar and I had big aspirations. And then I kept doing it. I rolled it over into the next month. It didn't happen that month in December. It didn't happen in January. I started it out in February, but in November. But in February, it happened. And so that was huge. And this was it was at least close to a year ago, if not the February before. And that's on my gratitude list. And I'm just looking at it. And so now it's a little bit old or stale. But I think to myself, well, if that happened at that time from where I was at, that was a huge number. Now it's not that inconceivable in my day-to-day business, but what can be next and what can be taken up there. But I think the more that somebody's active with this stuff, it could really be taken down to that micro level, which is what you talked about, where you just gave somebody space, or you opened the door for someone, or you had the mindfulness and the awareness and the care to give somebody a compliment or whatever. You could put that as a part of the gratitude list. But a lot of this stuff comes true, and it goes to the gratitude, and it frees up space for what I'm going to focus on next.
Right. Yeah. I just pulled up mine, and it's similar. I like the wording that you use, but I stay connected to God and my spiritual program daily. It says daily.
Affirmation.
That's an
Affirmation.
affirmation, and that's that's true. That's true. These affirmations, just for me, the definition of this list is the ideal, the best I can be in any particular day. I'm not perfect every day, but I have the capacity and have the evidence and the history to back these statements up. And they're important because sometimes I don't remember them. I'm a trusted and respected leader. That's important. I need to read that so that I don't, so I can see when that's happening. Because if I'm not present to what people are actually experiencing, then I'm going to miss something that's important. And I return to, so this is number 3, I return to awareness often and see my right size and place. That happens a lot. It may not happen before I say or do something maybe I shouldn't. Most of the time it does. And wow, I am so grateful in that moment that I did not cause any wreckage, didn't hurt any feelings, and didn't, hurt myself with any sort of regret or fear or having to clean it up, which is always a lovely activity. I learn and practice jujitsu quickly and often. Right? So that's that's an affirmation that's tied to one of my manifestations. So personally, whenever I see a manifestation that looks more like a goal, I do make a distinction because that, in my mind, the majority of that work is my work, and it is doing more of something to get to a place rather than letting go of the how. Still, I need to be an active participant, but I try to focus manifestations so the manifestation associated with I learn and practice jujitsu quickly and often is I am a blue belt by March 2015. That's their choice. My academy has that choice. Is that an aggressive date? Yeah, it's pretty aggressive. Is it possible? It's possible. But it has a lot of things that I am not in control of have to happen before something like that. And mostly it's not my decision to make. And frankly, I wouldn't want to get it before I deserve it. But so for me, there is work that's involved. But when I have the question, am I going to go roll today? I have to ask myself. Or am I letting myself off the hook today by not going? Am I tired? Am I lazy? If I read the affirmation list on a daily basis, I don't even get to that thought. If I read it in the morning and it says, "Oh, I learn and practice jujitsu quickly and often," oh fuck. Well, then that's who I am. I got to go to do it. I'm a runner. If that affirmation could be, I'm a runner. Okay. Well, runners run, so I guess I got to run. Runners don't talk about running. So, here's an affirmation that is, again, I don't have a lot of control. I am healthy in mind, body, and spirit. So there are things that I do as far as what I put in my body, how I let myself heal when I get hurt, and I get hurt more often now than I used to. 1, because I'm old, and 2, because I'm in a combat sport. But that when I read that, if I'm obsessing, not obsessing, if I'm just present to like I hurt my shoulder, or I start pitying myself, like oh my God, I can't believe I'm hurt again. Like that's an easy line of thinking that pops up. But if I'm reading my affirmations, I can say, oh, I'm healthy in mind, body. Oh, that's right, I'm healing. And I'll switch it like that to I'm healing. And I heal. And it takes me out of this injured victim, not going anywhere, that other thinking I was talking about. I'm hurt. Words are powerful, and to a certain extent, if I use healing thinking, if I'm healed in the present, then I do heal quicker. I'll just do one more. I finish what I start, right? So, you said to me, before we started, like, hey, 25 podcasts before the end, that's crazy. Yeah, it is. Will I finish it? I don't know. It's on my manifestation list, and even that is questionable. Is that more of a goal? Yeah. I mean, it just takes effort. Are they going to be quality podcasts? Are they going to be worth listening to? I mean, maybe that's what the manifestation should be. I complete 25 quality podcasts that have an impact before a certain time. Now, that involves a lot of stuff that I really can't control. I mean, we've had some not so great podcasts. I mean, not you and I think, but I have. And so they're not all winners at all. Here's another one that I'll let you speak, but here's another one that I should probably take off. I am a skilled guitar player. That happens is because you practice. You practice. Now, that should be off there unless I have an affirmation that says, I practice guitar daily. And then I would be. Here's one that's a total manifestation. I am a best-selling author. I have very, very little choice or control over that one. And like Guy Kawasaki, he talks about in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he talks about, I'm a best-selling author. I'm not the best author. I'm not nearly the best-selling. So that's a whole other thing. But what does that tell me? It tells me that there's a part of me that wants to be, to write and have an impact. So I am a best-selling. Is there ego there? Yeah, there's ego. But do I feel a whole lot? No. I want to. That's what this is about. I want to. We both have an experience, and the guys that come on this podcast have an experience that I want to share with people, because just our experience the other night talking to these guys that are good men that are searching for, like, how do you do that? And they flat out ask you, how do you have this life? So, and then I do have a money one, and it's actually, now that I'm reading it, it's not that grandiose. I am easily and joyfully generating $100,000 net profit annually from my rental business. And the reason I put that there was not so much that I put that there because I was stressing about it. I was in my head about, winter bookings and all this stuff. Like, I was like, you know what? Let's just lose control of this thing. It's going to happen. I'm just going to put it on the list and it'll happen. And when I stopped worrying about it, I started getting phone calls, and it's almost, referencing booking, that specifically remains to be seen, but I'm pretty confident that that's not a problem. And now I can focus on, the other stuff. That was a lot.
Yeah, you said you're easily doing it. That's why I like Matthew Ferry's Creating Sales Velocity, because this goes back to worldview, right? Like, what do we tell ourselves? What's the story that we're telling ourselves on a regular basis? You have hard days with that, I'm sure, and there's stressful moments dealing with tenants and everything else. But if you go back to, this is easy, it'll seem much more easy than the person who is, this is going to be such a grind to get there. I'm going to have to bust my ass,
right.
All that stuff. So it's those subtleties, number one. Number two, it's like with Creating Sales Velocity, that's what Matthew Ferry talks about a lot. And, everybody gets to decide what their experience is and what it's going to be in terms of their mindset. But I go back to that sometimes. Like, if I'm too heavy on myself and I'm thinking, I got to grab my lunch pail and hard helmet again today and just go, knock down some concrete and get some sales and produce some business, I'll switch that and I'll be like, you know what? Last year I had my biggest year, not this last year, the year before, and it still has become the biggest year. I think this year, I don't know yet for sure, but year before last, I had my biggest year ever, and I had no office. I had no office. Not only that, but
right.
I was all over the world. Probably 6 months out of the year, I was traveling to exotic places. I had a house in Hermosa Beach, one in Chicago, Brazil, in Colombia a bunch, Miami for the winter. I was bouncing all over the place, and I had a lot of downtime. I had my biggest year ever, and things were just kind of popping and falling in my lap. But anyway, I was curious too. I have some thoughts from what you were talking about, but since we're digging into the details, you say I learn jujitsu. Is there a reason you have it that way versus I am learning in the in sort of the process or the present? Maybe it's a technicality, but I think these things are important because when people put these things, like, I see a lot of my affirmations start with I am having, I am back, I am attracting, this and that. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's the beginning of a statement. So it's I learn. If you break it up, I learn jujitsu quickly and often. It's not the best, but I specifically wanted the quickly part to I learn and practice jujitsu quickly and often. Yeah, that can be reworded.
I am learning.
But
it's the same goal for you.
They're both present.
They are, although I am learning to me is slightly more like, happening and like reality right now.
Yeah,
like,
I see what you're saying.
But just a small thing that I was thinking about, because some of mine too, I've had to work on how am I exactly phrasing these things. And I know that a bunch of mine are imperfect, but.
Yeah, because I mean, the rest of them are in that framework. I stay connected. I am trusted. I return to awareness often, and I leave that not a perfect statement.
Mm-hmm.
I am healthy in mind, body, and spirit. I finish where I start. So yeah, that one is can be tweaked, and but it works. It works.
That's all that counts at the end of the day. I mean, what you're talking about with the healing too, I just kept thinking about how, psychosomatic, I mean, you're feeding health, mind and body, and this stuff is absolutely attached. A couple of examples that I was thinking about where just like your process mentally when you're looking at these things, this is where the down and dirty nitty gritty of the value of 10-10-10 comes in for me. For example, one of my manifests is I am 170 pounds and ripped in the winter of 2014, in the best shape of my life since I was 25 years old. And I don't get too crazy on the wording on the manifest, some of them. The affirmation, I think I'm a little more sensitive for whatever reason. But in any event, if I read that in the morning and I'm at my desk and I take my 10, 15 minutes and I'm absorbing all this and I'm thinking about it, because what do I do when I read that? I think of a beach. I think of me with my shirt off. I think of me being really healthy and just looking really good versus not. I mean, that's the goal. That's the thought. That's the manifestation or the affirmation. Then I make a trade in the market and, send an email, and then I walk into my kitchen. And I walk into my kitchen, and this has literally happened to me recently. And I see a cupcake. And then I see on the other side all day energy greens and a smoothie. And if I wouldn't have just read that, I'd be more susceptible to eating that cupcake. But because of the fact that I want to align with what I was just thinking, I actually make the choice to do the energy greens. Now, not all the time, but it's reinforcing what I want to be, what I want to manifest. I think to myself, am I aligning with what I just read? I'm a total hypocrite if I just go and eat that damn cupcake right now. And if there's days when I'm not reading this stuff, those are the days where I'll just divert because I don't really care. I haven't been thinking about it. It's not on my mind. One other one I'll just bring up really quick is affirmations. I have one. I am a brilliant and savvy businessman.
Yeah, I like that one.
I really like it a lot. It's helped me a tremendous amount because I think that, I don't come from that environment. Like, everybody in my entire family was, if they, with professional careers, totally blue collar, all, lunch pail, hard hat, going to work every day. And coming from a place of doubt, a lot of self-doubt. What do I deserve in life? A lot of people struggle with that, which is why I really am bringing it up. And I'm also realizing that it's not really that much of a challenge for me anymore. I've sort of stepped into this mostly. There's times when I'll get down, and that's why I leave it on there because, for example, I write investment newsletters, and this year's been tough in a couple of the sectors that I cover and focus on, and the stocks have just been smoked. And I get emails from my readers and people that are down, or when they're up. If they're up, I'm getting the pats on the back. If they're down, I'm an idiot, or there's some ulterior motive. And so I read the pulse of what's going on, and I look at my own account because I'm in the same stuff. And I'm just like, depending on what's going on with those decisions or with the month I'm having with producing revenues or execution on other segments of my business, I can have that doubt creep in where it's like, am I qualified to be doing what I'm doing? And so this affirmation reminds me that this is what I'm affirming about myself. So whether I feel like I'm qualified or not, I'm a brilliant and savvy businessman. And whether I feel it today or not, I'm going to feel it tomorrow. And that's where I'm going, and that's who I am, and that's where I'm headed. And it just really helps. Even when we talk about that subconscious level, I think that's a big part of it too, right? It's just like we have that nagging doubt or fear of, am I going to be successful, or should I be successful, or I'm at the table with a bunch of doctors and Nobel Peace Prize winners, and who the hell am I? Stepping into those things is the benefit of all this stuff, and then owning it and being comfortable with it, and then just using it still and having it on there for those reminders when we have an off day. Or the bonus of, like, I'll read that on one or two extremes. I'll read that on a day where I'm really feeling it because I'm crushing it and things are going well, and I'm just like, yeah, that's an awesome thing to be, and I am that, and that makes me feel good today, and I'm going to keep doing it. And then there's the day where I'm a loser, it's not happening, what am I even doing with myself? I should join the Peace Corps, fold this shit up, and it's all over. And this is a buoy to get me back up there. So
yeah, so first I would suggest reading your affirmation around your health at the grocery store.
good idea.
Because then you won't have those cupcakes sitting there, man.
Hey, I think in that case they were a gift, but I do buy a lot of sweets.
So that part of being a brilliant and savvy businessman is rolling with the punches, is seeing opportunity where others don't. I mean, that's really, where you've come from in a down market in 08 and 09, where everybody else saw loss. You saw opportunity. I remember you were alive with it. Like, it was a really transitional time. But even when things aren't going well in the present financially, objectively, it's important to read that because you have the capacity. It's an affirmation because it's true. It's not something that you have to will yourself into. You have to remind yourself, because there's that default that pulls you back into fear. I'm talking about me too, obviously. So that's how it operates for me. I want to talk about, so I'll just mention this first. So a lot of the times I won't be thinking about something specific in life. I will be down, confused, unsure of how to proceed in a couple of areas. And sometimes I'll get lost a little bit. I won't feel like I'm on solid ground, and I'll wonder, what should I do? Who should I be in this moment? And when I go back to this 10-10-10 and I read it, especially the affirmations, it is a rock. This is who I am. And so this is another list that I had. I am emotionally, spiritually, and physically healthy. I am a good student and retain information easily. I attract financial abundance. I enjoy giving money anonymously to people that need help. I am an efficient, effective, and skilled fire engineer. That was when I was an engineer. So all of these, when I read these things, I'm like, oh, right. That's who I am. And then the whole conversation that I was having is gone, because that was the illusion. That was my fear dragging me into this other place. So this also operates as a reset button to the truth of who I am in my best moments. And then I can say, oh yeah, I have a choice to be those things right now. So that was the tangent. And I wanted you to read the one about, because there are probably people wondering, okay, I read the 4-Hour Work Week. I work a 9-to-5 job, which is really an 8-to-6 job. I've got kids. I've got all these obligations. I have a limited income. I have all of these bills. How am I supposed to manifest money? where that I can't see the opportunity. You have an affirmation for that. That has been, it's a great way to address financial insecurity or fear of financial insecurity with a simple statement. Do you know the one I'm talking about?
Money is flowing.
Yeah.
Money is flowing to me from both expected and unexpected sources.
Done. You don't have to figure out what that means or where it's coming from. You could, checks in the mail. And now when you say, oh, okay, well, if that's an affirmation, and maybe that's a manifestation, for someone in the start. And that's a good one to have. Because when you open yourself up to that potential and it starts happening, boom, right on the affirmation list, and now you got momentum. And that's what happened. For me, it started with, I did have to start giving because I wanted to, I did want to be in a position to give money, and it was made very clear that time was now. That was not when I have money. It was give it up now. And then part of it was getting rid of my car. I got rid of my car because I realized it was an expense. So there's some work I could have done, and I did it. And that led to a whole series of opportunities because I wasn't in financial. It was something like $900 because I had rolled over a car. It was I didn't get the money I should have gotten for it. I shouldn't have sold it in the first place. And then you got the parking fees and the insurance and the gas and the parking tickets and all this stuff, and not being on time to places. And once I freed myself of that, all this other stuff was possible. But that I started by giving the money, because the idea was, the affirmation there was, I have more than enough money. I have more than enough money. Oh, if you do, then that will continue to be true. If you give money, you will continue to have more. And that worked, and that works. And it also, there's something very holy and spiritual about that process of giving and sharing. And what you taught me was this idea of being a good steward. And I think this speaks to the financial end of it as well, is that there's less of me that needs money than there was. Like when I didn't have it, I needed it. When I have it, I don't need it. It's nice. You said this. I was talking to, I forget who I was talking to, but I mentioned that, you said something like, yeah, money doesn't buy happiness, but it makes life easier. It makes life easier. And when this all starts flowing and you start to see what your life can be, you just want to keep it going. And money's part of it. Okay, so I'll have some more money come into my life so I can be in Brazil, which I'm looking forward to.
Me too, and it's coming quick. And I know that I think this has been a lot of content actually packed in, and we've probably run the course. But the last thing I'll say is, it was the one thing I wanted to touch on, and you segued into it perfectly around, you mentioned two things. Giving, number one. I feel like that is an area where it's, when I let go of what has been given to me, I look at it all as a gift, in that I am a steward at the end of the day. There's nothing I'm taking with me out of this earth. The more that I do that, it neutralizes any thoughts of lack, scarcity. I have a worldview, once again, that there's plenty. Or there's plenty, God can give me plenty. It's not take away from him, and it's limited resources. It's more of like, it's, one of my old business partners said this once about currency. He said, the word itself means to be in motion, to be moving. It's not supposed to be static. It's like a current. I like that thought. It needs to be coming in and coming out, coming in and coming out. And hopefully I'm a vessel for more. But this goes to what I would say is like, this is one of the most impactful, if not the most impactful view that I adopted probably about, I don't know when it was, but it's so common for all of us, and this was me before too, where it's like, okay, when I get there, I'll do this. When I have this much, I'll do this. There was one of our friends who went through this process back in a few years ago, and he was very ambitious, and he said, I want to be to the point where I'm giving $1 million 5 a year away to charity. And I'm like, well, that's very noble of you. Are you giving away $10 this week? He's like, no, I don't give. I can hardly make ends meet. And my point was what I had learned, which is he who is faithful with little is faithful with much. If there's a stewardship attitude that I take where, and this also pertains to gratitude, by the way. If I'm not grateful today for whatever it is that I have, if I can't find gratitude for something, chances are I'm not going to do that when I have a ton. It's just the character and the person that I am, and taking that time as a value. And so I really would encourage anyone. I mean, you have really no choice, so I think you should probably adopt this, which is start where you're at. Like if you want to have more money, do what you're supposed to do with what you've got. And if you want to give more, give something. Give what you can, even if it's a tiny amount that you think is inconsequential. Get in the habit of doing it and get in the habit of it growing. And to me, that I bring this up in meetings with people that we're not, it's totally, the world at large, in the business world and very high levels, where I brought this up with a board of directors meeting I was in just last month. And I was making a point, and I was talking about he who's faithful with little is faithful with much. We're not gonna go public at $1 billion valuation if you're not selling the day-to-day packages right here. And so to me, I just wanted to bring that up because it's a very powerful lesson that I learned and that I try to keep implementing.
And what that does, it allows you to be in the present. So if, I want to give 1.5. Oh, do you want to give? All right, we'll give now. And then you drop that on the affirmation list. I am someone who gives daily or weekly or whatever. But you're doing it. You're creating energy. There's evidence that you are becoming the person that you want to be, rather than this, how much money you got to make to give 1.5 million? I mean, a lot, right? A lot. But that's the same attitude I had. Absolute same attitude. All right, that was fantastic. Well, thank you again for helping me achieve 125th. Actually, you've got this is your third, right? Your third time?
Maybe so.
Yeah, so 3/25ths of this goal.
Awesome. And I'm leaving for Mexico City on Sunday, and I'll see you in Brazil in a few weeks, and we're going to have a good time.
The part about this particular vacation that just ties in to this very nicely is that I can be completely present down there. Everything else is going to be taken care of. And that's really what vacation should be. That's not some radical idea. But I'm just enjoying the idea that everything's on autopilot. And I get to be present in that moment with you and those other guys, and looking forward to it.
Cool, man.
Thanks
Boa noite. Boa noite.
I've got to learn.